on. You are now live. Everybody smile. Wave to the camera. Wave to the camera. Wave, wave. Act busy. Now, tomorrow, okay, this is the last, I think maybe the last day. No, I got one more day I'll do on the board, and then I have some PowerPoints. I go back and forth, depending more on my mood. Sometimes I like PowerPoints, I can show pictures. I like doing this because I can write, and also kind of gets me into the flow of things. How it works. And so I will post this on Teams, but also on my YouTube channel. Jay Partridge's YouTube channel. You go on the YouTube. Who owns the YouTube? The Google. And you type in Jay Partridge, and my classes come up, and so they'll start stacking up. And I have old ones too. I do some of the same stuff, but every class is different. Just because. Because. Thank you. Grab your hand up. Okay, so today I did yesterday because you guys are a little bit off because we're still getting back to that assembly. We're not counting that right now. Or there's nothing. But chapter 3 is a very short chapter. And you do have to read chapter 3 in America. In America. And on Teams, I posted 5 things you just have to make sure you know from that chapter. Basically, the 7th grade awakening. It's on Teams. The list is on Teams. If you go to Teams, it's on there. So everyone cool with that? You know, everyone, they log into Teams and check that? It's not an assignment. You just have to have that read, and it has to be read by Friday. Yes. Oh, I read it. Oh, you're in chapter 3? Well, thank you, but it's in America. I'm sorry. Okay. Also, is there any? Nope, I didn't give any additional homework. There something I failed? From Zen, yeah. Yeah, the Zen was due yesterday. And so you have that? Chapter 2. Yes. American. So unless I specifically write down Zen, or later on we'll get that review book, which don't worry, that's just a review for the AP exam. Just assume it's going to be out of America. Sound good? But Zen is just a supplement. Yes. So we're supposed to do also the chapter 1 question 4. For this period, I only assign 5 through 6 because we didn't have. You guys had that assigned.
All right. Well, yes, because I was going to say it's the same thing else this way.
Yeah, the other classes I assigned question 4 had more. Thank you, my good man. Name on it. Very good. All right, let's finish up because we yesterday I gave you the documents. Who was gone yesterday? Missed the documents. We have one, and then you. So we got to. Oh, we got a couple things to handle that. I almost forgot this fun little thing. Who has done this? Then have a better question. Who hasn't done this? Okay, keep your hand up for the rest of the period as punishment. Please get this done on your own time as soon as possible. It's really easy. And then these are documents. This is stuff for the next 3 weeks. And then this one, that's just for the AP. It's very basic. All right. So where do we finish in here? Yes.
You were in the middle of talking about.
Oh, so kind of a big deal. And I told you about what do they when the guys in Jamestown first arrived? They're almost all men, dandies, so the sons of wealthy aristocrats. What's the first thing they did when they got there? Yeah, shovel sand in the barrel. Yay, sand! And how did they defeat the Powhatans? Poison the wine. And this is going to happen. Massachusetts will do it in 1630. Obviously, we have to kind of pick and choose. When the most important is coming, it's going to be called King Philip's War right here. And yes. Say it again. Well, right now we're just kind of reviewing from yesterday. And so yesterday's going to be online, so you have to go back and some of that. And else we think? Oh, so plantation owners are obsessed by what two things?
Tobacco.
Well, they want to grow tobacco, but what do they need? Land and labor. And what differentiated indentured servants from slaves? Wasn't the treatment, it was what? That contract. That little piece of paper. There's a few that still float around. That little piece of paper. And did we finish Bacon's Rebellion or right in the middle of it?
We were like, talking about the militia and how they were like joining the rebellion.
Oh, the militia joined the rebellion?
Yeah.
Who joined Bacon's Rebellion? What kind of people?
Everybody.
Yeah, slaves, indentured servants, and there are people who are American descent, African descent, European descent. You know, just it was everybody. And the militia joined up. That's right where we quit?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, because you're about to
Oh, the
say-
winter stopped them. And they also paid off poor in the eastern part to defeat poor otherwise. You'll find that a lot. They'll kind of divide. They'll use other countries, happen also in the United States, but they'll use, for example, like rural militia to put down urban like strikes. Like in 1989, when China, there's democracy movements in China, they used soldiers from rural areas to put down the urban protesters. Or strikes in the United States in 1877 all the way up through this 1920s. To put down strikes and force them to go back to work, they would use rural soldiers or black soldiers to put down strikes of white people. Yes. Hate humanity?
Yeah.
No.
Basically learning
I don't think so. Okay, so with that, no, absolutely not. Sounds like that answer. And with that, so the rebellion was put down, but then what happened next? Did we read the document in class? No. So that's what we got to do. Everybody look at the documents. Now, fornication. Did I tell you what fornication was? Ah, good. Did you know what fornication is? Fornication is, now, on its most base term, and this was considered to be a crime, even though, of course, the people who are writing the law. Oh, who was writing the laws in Virginia? What were they called again? The House of Burgesses, the wealthy landowners. Fornication means sex outside of marriage. That's just what it is. Sex outside of marriage. No, there's not a class. Any other details about it except for that. And so the thing is, this is going on. And this is going on before, this is going on after. But they specifically wrote this law after Bacon's Rebellion. So, I'm sorry. Question number 7 of chapter 2 out of Zen. Remember, what did they do to drive a wedge between the working people, those lower classes? Yeah. So, and what do we call those? The indentured servants, what do we call that? Did I tell you that name? Yeah, head right. I'm pointing to my head. Yeah, that's the head right. But they also did a series of laws, too. And one of these laws, I told you head right yesterday, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay, good. The fornication laws, you look at the date on this, 1691. In fact, whenever you look at the document, the first thing you do is look at the title, look at the name. Don't get in the habit, I have this bad habit too. You're supposed to read something, and I just start reading. I gotta read, you just read. Think about what's going on. We know what's going on. We should not know. You know, Bacon's Rebellion, indentured servants, slaves, Virginia colony, tobacco. We know the basic elements of it. Did we talk malaria in here too? We'll talk malaria in just a second. Don't get malaria. I'm full of life advice. And what do we know about cannibalism? Well, you missed one. Okay, but no, cannibalism bad. Okay, so then all I want you to do is read that very first paragraph. read that very first paragraph. We know fornication laws. Now think about Bacon's rebellion, slave, indentured servants, backward cultivation, how awful it is. Now read. That was documents from yesterday. You can write, yeah, you can underline it, but in fact, it's a good idea to go and underline the part, or just jot down on the side one or two words that you know, what basically what the document is trying to get across, its purpose. And the reason why is, let's say I have to read 5 documents in a row. Trust me, you will forget that first one. You're one of those who can remember everything. I know it's long. Sorry. That's the key part. Okay, how do we, when you look at, did I scare you? All right, now this is what we call a law that changed the world. And it's one of these laws that nobody knows with a very awkward name, fornication laws. We just go, okay, don't worry about that. But this had to deal, you think about driving a wedge. Before Bacon's rebellion, slaves and indentured servants were relatively similar, so they didn't have that contract. Slaves might get a little piece of land or get their freedom. But what did this do to slavery? What did this law do to slavery? Yeah. Not quite raised yet, but that's coming really fast. But it's setting the stage by race, so you're exactly right there. So this is the first step to making it by race. So it is segregating now. There's a huge difference. Indentured servants, they'll be free. Indentured servants' children, even if they were in the condition of servitude, slavery, when they have that child's going to be what? Here, condition of servitude for slaves is dependent upon the child's what? Mother. The mother, if your mother's a slave, you're a slave. And so they've just created permanent slavery by law. No longer is it this kind of vague, slaves might get free someday, they might not. Now it is by law. And it's a very short step to segregate by color. Just very short step. Now remember, there's all kinds of slaves. As we said yesterday, there are slaves from Europe, there are slaves from North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Americas. So this whole hodgepodge of people are slaves. But now it is saying that Your mother's a slave, you're a slave. I should add this. It's saying fornication is a crime. Who are the fathers? Huh? The owners. So what's happening? Now let's be clear, affairs. The servants and the slave, they have no choice. So it's not like a love affair and the romantic and they go on dates. No, what's happening? Yeah, they're being moved. And is this happening a lot? It's one of the things about slavery. All the time. All the time. The women are owned. And indentured servants too. It's happening there too. Who's writing the laws? Not all white men. Some white men, they're indentured servants. No. Don't get bogged down in race.
House of Birds.
Say that again?
House of Birds.
House of Burgesses. And what House of Burgesses are the very same people who are what? They're the slave owners who are doing what? They're the ones doing it. Yes. Say it again. That's a very good question. They all knew it was wrong, but they also knew one more thing.
Money.
We want to make money. And so it's amazing how people can justify things, bad things they do. Every one of you have probably justified something you probably did wrong. Okay, now here. None of you have done anything wrong. And we all can justify it. It's amazing how we can justify some pretty horrible. And it's, no, we obviously can't go back and change it, but it leads us, there's reasons why we are what we are. It's complex. There's no black and white. It's a gray area. The also more terrifying thing is, isn't there now a financial incentive to get your slaves pregnant? Because that makes more slaves. It's kind of shocking, isn't it? So, you have now said a big difference. Indentured servants, someday they'll be free. And they have that contract. Slaves, not only will not be free, it just gives you another window on how horrific the treatment was. Slaves. How just absolutely horrific. Well, let's get back one more thing. Malaria! But you weren't ready for malaria today. Nobody expects malaria? Yes, I'm a Monty Python fan. Malaria! What spreads malaria? Now, they did not know that then. But malaria. So malaria spread from Africa. Malaria, there's actually, which is ravaging Europe. Areas where there's lots of mosquitoes. Let me throw an area out here, like a swamp. So, as malaria spread on board the same ships from the Spanish on up, you can imagine how malaria is just all over, from basically Virginia down because of the latitude. And so, indentured servants are catching malaria, landowners are catching malaria, African slaves are catching malaria. You know, they're all getting malaria. There are two main strains of malaria. We're not going to go into detail of the two strains, except for one very important thing. People of sub-Saharan Africa have a significant number of immunities from one of those strains. North of the Sahara, and that means Asia and the Americas, they're hit by both strains. Sub-Saharan, one strain really gets them, the other one not as much. Have you heard of sickle cell anemia?
Yeah.
It appears to be related to that. It appears to be. It's still it's a mystery to this day, but it appears to be. In fact, the first 6 months, indentured servants, African slaves, anybody would come in because of malaria. But also the shock of going to the New World, how difficult it was to change in diet. You can imagine, they called it seasoning. Which I should add is kind of a scary little name, isn't it? They literally called it seasoning. And if you survive that 6 months, you have a chance to live. They have underestimated by a factor of maybe 2 or 3 how many people died in those first 6 months. How many people from England, Europe, and also from Africa. Now, malaria doesn't necessarily kill you, but it weakens you, it makes you lethargic, you're miserable, you're more susceptible to disease. It might last 6 months, it might last a year. And the fun part is, if you get malaria, you might finally recover, and then 10 years later, it might come back worse. It's a fun disease. So what's happening? If you had a plantation, you're seeing the seasoning process. Who's it hitting harder? You. Well, maybe you, but who else? Which laborers? Indentured servants. So what are you going to want? More what? Well, but there's slaves from all over. Slaves from where? Sub-Saharan Africa. You're exactly right. So you say color of skin, you see where this is going? So there's going to be a reason to bring in more sub-Saharan African slaves. So I'm just going to put down African, but don't forget North African slaves. There are a lot of North African slaves. There are a lot of European slaves. And they were susceptible, North Africans susceptible to both kinds of malaria. So as more and more slaves are from sub-Saharan Africa, slavery became more and more associated with drugs. It wasn't like that before, but it's going to start to become this. So they just passed the fornication laws. I can't write. Fornication laws. And this would be the biggest of a series of laws they called the slave codes. The slave codes, now every society that has slavery will pass slave codes. In fact, they actually looked at Roman slave codes to pass them. Because the fear of slave rebellion is overwhelming. I will come back to that. There's nothing more horrific than a slave rebellion. Slaves know how they're treated. They want revenge. The masters know how they treat the slaves. They know. Yes.
How does Christians would enslave people? Since they are entire book of how
So in the Bible, but also the Torah, the Quran, they have elements about how to enslave people and how not to enslave. There's both in there. If they're in that religion, sure. Yeah. Yeah, if people are Christian or Jewish or Muslim or any other religion, they will ignore what you want. And slave codes. So these laws would also be, the big thing is more legal rights. If you don't have that contract, you have more legal rights. So for example, like indentured servants, okay, they didn't have rights to pick the members of the House of Burgesses yet, but they might have the right to be in a jury trial. That's a big deal. The right to give testimony. Inheritance rights. So you have the right to decide who your inheritance will go to, whatever little piece of land you might have. So more legal rights. And they started giving them a bigger head right. That was the whole thing in Zen about a little bit more land, a little bit more. So we have someday indentured servants, they'll be free. And they'll have a little more rights. Slaves, they're not going to be free. They don't have these rights. And more slavery is associated with color of skin. How long do you suppose it took people to go, oh, these laws kind of favor us, to, oh, I guess these laws favor us because it's natural and it's the way it's always been. Think about how many laws there are today. You know, the laws there are just become like societal norms. We just accept it. How long do you suppose it took? About a generation and a half. Well, we must be, if we have more rights and we're free someday, or we are free, people were descendants of indentured servants started saying we must be what? Better. And what else is in common about us more and more? We're better and we have lighter colored skin. They're slaves and have darker colored skin. What came out of slave codes, fornication laws, and Bacon's Rebellion? This is where racism comes from. Racism, as we know, in fact, the term race did not even exist. Oh, sure, people noticed different colors of skin. They might have talked about it, but it didn't exist. Slavery had nothing to do with color of skin until here. And then it quickly spread everywhere. It's shocking how fast it took. Racism. And the idea of racism is creating a hierarchy by color of skin. Do you know what I mean by hierarchy? Levels by color of skin. In this context, it's lighter colored skin on top. Hierarchy by skin color. Skin color. Hierarchy. Bottom, and then go up. So think about how this is going to work. Once you decide that skin color decides hierarchy of race, and the people who happen to have more white or land happen to be lighter skin, how does that change your view towards American Indians? Darker skin, I guess maybe they don't deserve this land. Or what about colonizing other areas? Darker skin, they must be inferior. It's our duty to civilize. It's amazing how fast it happened. By the end of the 19th century, the brand new science of biology had classified 40 different races. And they did it very much hierarchy. So it was and you name it, just people that were supposed on the bottom, they gave a different race. Like, for example, England subjugated Ireland, so they said Irish were different race. Now, there's no real difference between any Homo sapiens, us, regardless of skin color. There's no real difference. You know, there's some little, obviously we look different, but by color of skin is no different. But what a great way to divide the world if you're the one at the top. And now they've justified this higher. You see why Bacon's Rebellion is such a big deal. This changes everything. But it's also important to understand one thing. That racism really has nothing to do with color of skin. It's about those on top staying on top. Racism, its roots come out of class. Class is hierarchy of wealth. It comes out of that. And what does it use? It starts with an economic system, doesn't it? Slavery. We can't find people to work and we want to justify it. Oh, doesn't this now justify slavery really nicely? We're not enslaving equal, so it's fine. Oh, I can sleep now at night. I'm okay. Laws, and then social norms. It becomes just the way it is. And who did it all? There are not good answers from there. House of Burgess is right. The landholders, they made the government. Yeah. And so it's more than just prejudice. It's a lot more. So you can't just simply say, okay, well, we're all going to be friends and come together for a group health. Because it comes from something else. No, I have no easy answers. And that's part of the thing. We'll go through a lot of this. Bacon's Rebellion is a big deal. 1676 is one of those years that changed everything. In fact, the very first African slaves that we know for sure that came to British colonies was in 1619. It might have came in 1617, but that's still gray area because of a record keeping. They weren't called slaves, they were called servants. Remember what I told you? Slaves and indentured servants were essentially treated the same, except for that piece of paper. And so, that's why this is such a big deal. We learned a lot of today, didn't we? Learn about malaria, racism. When's the bell ring? Oh, so while this is going on, then okay, so now they're divided, aren't they? Poor whites, or poor who are indentured servants are now more and more white, are divided by black because of this idea that, well, there's a difference. One is on top. When the Civil War was fought, almost all white people in the South did not have slaves. Yet they did almost all the fighting. Why would they fight and die? Hundreds of thousands. So somebody else could keep their slave. Yeah?
As people who own slaves generally tended to have a lot more control over. And the case that you might have work was trying to take away everyone's freedom and making out or them paying for
But what part of the South? You're on the right track, but we got to get to one more big thing. Wait, here we go. Poor whites didn't have much. They might have terrible land, almost no money, limited political rights. But what's the one thing they had that might go away if you got rid of slavery? Our position. We're not slaves. And you get rid of slavery, we lose that. Okay, you're exactly right. They pushed that idea. All right, we got a little left to finish tomorrow. And then fitness. We have nothing to do but running. Bring good shoes. Heart support.
Okay.
We're not running.
Okay, well, I sent the teams to make sure what textbooks to bring.
Well, we don't need to bring textbooks. Yeah, unless I tell you. Okay. Of America, yeah. I'm all messed up because of the test. I started getting really hungry. Yeah, I'm like really hungry. No way! Have a good day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. That's free shoes. Chuck Taylor's. I played basketball. You have someone pick for your interview? Who? That's perfect. That's a great one. Any new people? Is it good? Yeah. Well, you'll find out now. That would be a good thing to interview them. I mean, put it on it. You guys have to walk. On the logger, yeah. Oh, I did know that, yeah. I see a lot of you still pick my clock. They didn't warn you.